The second time I lived through Monday morning, I did not walk into the science lab like a girl hoping to survive the week. I walked in like a witness returning to the crime scene before the murderer knew the body existed. The room looked exactly the same as it had in my first life. Blue gas taps lined along black benches, glassware drying upside down near the sinks, laminated safety posters curling at the corners, and the sour, clean smell of disinfectant failing to hide old vinegar, ethanol, and panic. On the whiteboard, written in Mr. Halden's square handwriting, were the words that had once ruined me. Week 9 practical assessment, partnered investigation, final grades posted Friday. In my first life, Friday was the day my name fell from first in chemistry to academic concern. Friday was the day my science scholarship interview was canceled without explanation. Friday was the day my mother stopped asking what happened because every answer made me sound more guilty. And Friday was the day Sienna Vale's perfect record became untouchable. 4 straight years of flawless grades, spotless conduct, glowing teacher recommendations, and one neat little practical report that contained my work, my calculations, my observations, and none of my name. By the time I realized she had not only stolen my data, but framed me for falsifying hers, the gradebook was locked, the lab camera footage had failed, and my damaged notebook was found near a scorched bench with my initials written over pages I had never seen. I died years later still carrying that Friday inside me, still hearing people say, Sienna would never cheat. Her record is perfect. So when I opened my eyes and found myself 15 again, standing at the lab door while Mr. Halden began pairing students for the investigation, I did not pray, cry, or beg the universe for mercy. I raised my hand before Sienna could smile at me and said, Sir, I'd like to change my science partner. Every head turned. That was the first beautiful sound of the week. 28 students turning at once because the quiet girl had interrupted the script. In my first life, I sat beside Sienna because everyone expected it. We were the top 2 science students at Northbridge Preparatory, though the school never said that too loudly because Sienna's parents funded the new research wing, and mine worked double shifts at the hospital cafeteria. Our pairing looked fair from the outside. Perfect Sienna Vale and hardworking Nora Quinn, combining excellence for the school's most important practical assessment of the year. The truth was that Sienna collected capable girls the way labs collected specimens. She partnered with them, praised them, borrowed their notes, let them do the heavy lifting, then somehow emerged with perfect marks while they stumbled at the final step. It was always explainable. Her Year 8 partner forgot to submit her appendix. Her Year 9 partner mislabeled samples. Her Year 10 partner panicked during the oral defense. Every girl blamed herself because Sienna was kind afterward. She cried with them. She brought chocolate. She said things like, "Marks don't define you," while her own marks defined the school newsletter. I had been the final specimen before senior scholarship rankings. She needed my enzyme data, my graphing method, my uncertainty calculations, and, most importantly, she needed my reputation lowered before Friday's grades. In the first life, I gave her all of it because I thought partnership meant trust. This time, I kept my hand raised and watched her face. Sienna Vale, with her smooth blonde ponytail, pearl earrings, white lab coat already ironed, and expression of gentle confusion, looked at me as if I had just poured acid into the goldfish tank. Only for a second. Then the mask returned. "Nora," she said softly, "did I do something?" The whole room leaned toward her hurt voice. I smiled.
"No."
"That's why I'm changing partners before you get the chance." Mr. Halden blinked behind his glasses. He was not a cruel teacher, which almost made him more dangerous. Cruel teachers leave fingerprints. Careless teachers leave doors unlocked. In my first life, he believed the evidence because he trusted the system, trusted Sienna's record, trusted that a student who cried quietly must be honest, and a student who defended herself too hard must be hiding something. "Nora," he said slowly, "partner requests were finalized last Friday. Then I'm requesting a revision before experimental work begins," I replied. "I'll work with whoever doesn't have a partner." A laugh came from the back bench. "That would be me. said Callum Reyes, the boy everyone called Lab Hazard because he once shattered a beaker by sneezing into his elbow and knocking over a clamp stand. He had dark curls, ink on his fingers, permanent sleep under his eyes, and the kind of reputation teachers used as a warning label. In my first life, I barely spoke to him. He failed half his quizzes, skipped homework, and spent lab periods doodling machines in the margins of his worksheets. But I remembered something nobody else cared about. After my scandal, Callum was the only person who muttered, "That notebook burn pattern didn't make sense," before Sienna's friends told him to shut up. He noticed what others ignored. That made him more valuable than every polished student in the front row. Mr. Halden frowned. "Nora, this assessment contributes significantly to your term grade. Are you sure you want to work with Callum?" The insult was so casual that Callum flinched before hiding it behind a grin. I picked up my folder, walked past Sienna's bench, and sat beside him. "Yes, sir," I said.
"I prefer honest mess over polished danger."
Callum stopped grinning. Sienna's fingers tightened around her pen.
Top, top, top.
In my first life, I thought that was nerves. Now I knew it was counting. The investigation topic was reaction rates, specifically how temperature affected catalase activity in potato extract as it broke down hydrogen peroxide. Simple enough for a classroom, complex enough to bury fraud in timing, sample mass, oxygen volume, and temperature control. In my first life, I designed the method: equal potato mass, controlled pH, water baths at 4 temperatures, gas syringe measurements every 20 seconds, 3 repeats, mean rate calculated from the initial slope. Sienna smiled through the planning lesson and called me brilliant. Then she copied my method, changed 2 details, submitted it under both our names, and later claimed I had secretly altered the raw data because I feared her section of the report was stronger. The forged pages found in my notebook showed impossible oxygen volumes at temperatures where catalase should have denatured. Mr. Halden said only someone desperate to beat Sienna would invent results that convenient. I had screamed that I never wrote those numbers. He said my handwriting was close enough. Close enough. Those 2 words ruined my life. This time, while Mr. Halden explained validity, reliability, and Friday grade moderation, I opened a fresh notebook in front of Callum and wrote across the first page in thick black marker: all raw data recorded in duplicate, time-stamped photos after each trial, partner signatures required. Callum looked at the page, then at me. "You always this intense?" "Only when someone is about to frame me." His eyebrows rose.
Most people would have laughed.
Callum did not. He leaned back, studying Sienna as she spoke softly with her new partner, a nervous girl named Leah Park. "Vale?" he asked under his breath. "Vale," I said. He tapped his pencil against his notebook, once, not twice. Finally. That word told me Callum knew more than he had ever said. But before I could ask, Sienna appeared beside our bench holding a pink folder and an expression of careful concern. "Nora, can we talk?" she asked. Leah hovered behind her, clutching a blank worksheet like a shield. "We're talking." Sienna lowered her voice, which of course made the nearby students listen harder. "I'm worried people might misunderstand your choice. It looks like you don't trust me." "Correct," I said. Callum coughed into his sleeve. Sienna's eyes widened, glossy at the edges. "I don't know why you're being like this." In my first life, that sentence would have sent me scrambling to repair the image of myself as kind. This time, I let the discomfort sit there like an unlabeled chemical. "You have Leah now," I said. "Focus on your experiment." Leah looked between us, pale. I wished I could warn her properly, but warnings sound like jealousy when the villain has better lighting. Sienna leaned closer. Her perfume was soft vanilla, the same scent that clung to my stolen notebook after it was found, near the burned bench. "Nora," she whispered, too low for anyone but me and Callum, "you're making yourself look unstable." There it was. Day 1, and already the first label. I smiled so calmly her eyes flickered.
"Good.
Then stay away from unstable chemicals." She straightened, face smoothing instantly, as Mr. Halden approached. "I just wanted to make sure she felt supported, sir," Sienna said. Mr. Halden smiled at her, then glanced at me with mild disappointment. Let's all keep the learning environment respectful. I wrote that down too. Monday, 9:22 a.m. Sienna warns I look unstable. Teacher frames boundary as disrespect. Documentation was not dramatic. It was survival with timestamps. By lunch, the rumor had already formed legs. Nora Quinn had dumped Sienna because she was jealous. Nora Quinn thought she was too good for the top student. Nora Quinn had chosen Callum so she could control the whole project and blame him if it failed. In my first life, I cared deeply about rumors because I thought reputation was something you kept clean by behaving well. In my second life, I understood reputation was something other people edited when you left blank spaces. So I filled every blank space I could. I emailed Mr. Halden our agreed method before the end of lunch and copied Callum. I attached a planning sheet with version numbers. I asked, politely, whether all partner groups should photograph raw data at the bench to ensure transparency. He replied, "Good initiative, Nora. Not required, but recommended."
Perfect.
Recommended was enough. Then I printed the email in the library because digital truth can disappear when powerful parents call administrators. Callum found me by the printer, holding 2 cafeteria sandwiches and a carton of milk. "You eat?" he asked. "Sometimes." He handed me 1 sandwich without ceremony. "You're going to need calories if you're starting a war with Sienna Vale." I looked at him carefully. "Why did you say finally?" He opened his milk carton with his teeth, which made me question every safety rule he had ever ignored. "Because Sienna has been polishing her perfect record with other people's fingerprints since year 8. "You knew?" I suspected. "My cousin was her partner in middle school. Lost a science prize over missing raw data." Sienna cried harder than she did. He looked toward the courtyard, where Sienna sat under the jacaranda tree surrounded by girls laughing at something she had said. People think evil looks like shouting. Sometimes it looks like offering to rewrite your conclusion for clarity. My hand tightened around the printed email. "Then help me catch her before Friday." Callum's grin returned, sharper this time. "Lab hazard reporting for duty." Tuesday was experimental design approval, which sounded harmless until Sienna turned it into a trap. Each pair had to present their method briefly while Mr. Halden checked variables. Sienna and Leah went first. Sienna's voice was clear, pretty, and perfectly paced. She described equal potato samples, hydrogen peroxide concentration, controlled water baths, gas volume measurements, and 3 repeats per temperature. My method. Not copied exactly, but close enough that my first life spine went cold. She even used my phrase, "Initial rate from the steepest linear section." Leah stood beside her looking relieved to be attached to competence. The class nodded. Mr. Halden praised the clarity. Then Sienna looked toward me with a tiny apologetic smile, as if to say she had not meant to outshine me with my own thoughts. In my first life, I would have panicked and tried to prove the method was mine. This time, I raised my hand. "Sir, can partner groups submit method drafts to the shared folder with upload times visible? Since several groups may use similar designs, it helps track independent planning." Sienna's smile thinned. Mr. Halden considered it. "That's reasonable." He opened the class portal on the projector and asked everyone to upload their planning sheets before the bell. Sienna's fingers flew over her keyboard. Too fast. Already prepared. I uploaded ours, which I had emailed at lunch the previous day. Then I raised my hand again. "Sir, should we upload email drafts too, if sent earlier?" Mr. Halden looked mildly amused. "If you wish." I uploaded the timestamped email from Monday. On the screen, our method appeared with a timestamp 20 hours before Sienna's upload. The class did not gasp. Real exposure rarely starts with gasps. It starts with tiny shifts. Leah glancing sideways, Callum sitting straighter, Sienna clicking once too hard on her trackpad, Mr. Halden clearing his throat. "Good record keeping," he said. I wrote that down. Tuesday, 10:11 a.m. First public timestamp establishes method origin. Sienna adapted by afternoon. Of course she did. A cornered perfect girl does not confess. She becomes more perfect in a different direction. During independent work, she approached Callum while I was rinsing measuring cylinders. I watched through the reflection in the window above the sink. She leaned near him, smiling sympathetically. You know Nora will blame you if this goes badly, right? Callum kept arranging test tubes. Probably. Sienna blinked. That doesn't bother you? Everything bothers me. I'm very sensitive. I'm serious, she whispered. She's using you to make a point. When grades come out, she'll say you ruined her experiment. Callum finally looked at her. You mean like you said Emma ruined your chromatography board in year 8? Sienna's face froze. What? Or like my cousin misplaced your raw data, except somehow you still had a clean copy? Her eyes sharpened. You should be careful, Callum. People already expect you to fail. That's my advantage, he said. No perfect record to burn. She walked away with her jaw tight. I returned to the bench carrying wet cylinders and a new respect for him. You heard, he asked. Window reflection. Good. You're creepy too. Thank you. We began our first trial practice after school, not for marks, just to test equipment. Callum's hands were steadier than his reputation. He labeled tubes with tape flags, checked the gas syringe seal twice, and noticed the water bath thermometer read 2 degrees low. Lab hazard. I said. Mostly branding, he replied. If teachers expect chaos, they stop asking why you're watching. That sentence stayed with me. In another life, I had been destroyed because everyone expected ambition from me and innocence from Sienna. Callum survived by becoming underestimated on purpose. Wednesday was the day Sienna tried to touch our data. The class ran official trials under assessment conditions, with Mr. Halden moving between benches and a lab assistant supervising chemical access. I had prepared like someone defending a border. Every tube was numbered. Every raw reading was written by one partner, checked by the other, signed by both, then photographed beside the digital clock. Callum suggested we place a small strip of blue painter's tape on the corner of every data sheet before photographing, because if someone swapped pages later, the tear pattern would differ. That idea was so clever I stared at him. He shrugged. My uncle repairs phones. Tamper evidence. At 11:30, while our 40 degrees Celsius trial was running, the fire alarm chirped once then stopped. Everyone looked up. Mr. Halden frowned toward the hallway. The lab assistant stepped out to check the panel. That was when Sienna crossed behind us carrying a waste beaker. Her sleeve brushed our bench. A folded slip of paper slid near our notebook. In my first life, I would not have seen it. This time, I had been waiting for the world to blink. I caught her wrist before she moved away. Not hard, just enough. The class froze. The waste beaker trembled in her hand. Nora, she said, voice instantly fragile. You're hurting me. I released her at once and stepped back, palms visible.
Sorry.
Your paper fell. Mr. Halden turned. What's going on? I pointed to the folded slip on the bench. Sienna dropped something near our raw data notebook. Sienna's eyes filled. It's just scrap. Then you won't mind Mr. Halden opening it. She did mind. I saw it in the way her throat moved. Mr. Halden picked up the slip. Inside were numbers. Oxygen volumes. Beautiful numbers. Too beautiful. Results showing perfect enzyme activity increasing smoothly with temperature all the way to 70 degrees Celsius, which would be scientifically suspicious because catalase should begin denaturing. In my first life, numbers like those appeared in my notebook and became proof I had fabricated data to look impressive. Mr. Halden's face tightened. The whole room waited for him to do what he did the first time, interpret evidence in the direction of Sienna's innocence. Sienna did not wait. She whispered, "Why would Nora have that?" It was brilliant. She had not said I planted it. She only asked the question, letting everyone else complete the accusation. My stomach turned, but my voice stayed even. She dropped it. Our camera may have recorded the bench. Sienna's eyes flicked to my phone on the side stand. It was angled at our workspace, recording time-lapse as part of our method review. Mr. Halden had approved it that morning after I asked publicly whether groups could record equipment setup to verify technique. He looked uncomfortable, which told me he was beginning to understand how many doors he had left unlocked in the first life. We'll review it after class, he said. For now, continue. Sienna's face did not change, but Leah's did. Leah looked at the numbers, then at her own notebook, then at Sienna. Doubt had entered the chat, as Callum would later say. We completed the trial. Our real data was messy in the honest way science often is. A clear rise from cold to warm temperatures, then a drop at high heat, with one repeat slightly off because Callum forgot to start the timer until I hissed his name. We recorded the error instead of hiding it. That mattered. Perfect records hate honest errors because honest errors prove humans were present. After class, Mr. Halden reviewed the video with me, Callum, Sienna, Leah, and the lab assistant present. In the clip, the fire alarm chirped. The assistant stepped out. Sienna crossed behind us. Her sleeve brushed the bench. The paper appeared. It was not cinematic. It did not show her hand dramatically planting evidence. It showed enough. Mr. Halden replayed it twice. Sienna's tears arrived on the second replay. I didn't know it fell, she said. It must be from Leah's scrap notes. Leah went white.
Mean?
Sienna turned to her, wounded. You were calculating predicted values earlier. Leah shook her head. Not those. Maybe you forgot, Sienna said softly. In my first life, that tone had been used on me. Gentle, patient, deadly. Leah looked like a bird caught in a windowed room. I stepped in before the trap closed around her. Sir, the handwriting on the slip can be compared to our notes. But the bigger issue is that the numbers are scientifically impossible for our method. Callum added, and weirdly similar to the kind of fake data someone would plant if they wanted another group accused of fabrication. Mr. Halden looked at him sharply. Callum lifted both hands. Hypothetically. Sienna's tears thickened. This is humiliating. I have never been accused of anything in my life. That's not evidence, I said. The sentence landed harder than I expected. Mr. Halden looked at me, then at Sienna. For the first time across 2 lives, he did not immediately protect the perfect record. I'll keep the slip, he said quietly. All groups will submit raw data digitally by the end of today. Sienna's tears stopped for half a second.
There.
Digital submission meant timestamps. Timestamps meant friction. Friction meant fire. Thursday morning, the lab smelled like rain and hot plastic because one of the incubators had overheated before school. Everyone was tense. Friday grades were less than 24 hours away, and the practical assessment had grown teeth. Sienna arrived late, which never happened. Her ponytail was still perfect, but there were faint shadows under her eyes. Leah avoided her. Mr. Halden began class by announcing an additional oral defense for all partner groups, 5 minutes each, explaining method, anomalies, and calculations. Sienna's head snapped up. Oral defense had not happened in my first life until after the accusation, when I was too shaken to explain anything clearly. Now it applied to everyone. Since this is a major grade, Mr. Halden said, not looking at anyone directly, I want to ensure each student understands their submitted work. I almost smiled. Careless teachers could learn, if embarrassment became educational. Callum leaned toward me. She's cooked. Not yet, I whispered. Perfect students know how to memorize.
Sure.
But they struggle with errors they didn't personally make. He tapped our notebook. We had included every messy detail, the delayed timer, the low thermometer reading, the water bath correction, the denaturation explanation, the gas syringe leak test. Sienna could copy polished results. She could not copy lived mistakes she had never lived. That was the hidden strength of honest work. It contained scars. Our oral defense came before hers. Mr. Halden asked why our 60 degrees Celsius data dropped sharply. I explained enzyme denaturation, active site changes, and reduced catalase activity. Callum explained why the 40 degrees Celsius third repeat was excluded from the mean rate calculation but still shown in the appendix because the timer error was procedural, not biological. Mr. Halden asked why our graph had error bars. Callum said, because pretending repeats are identical is lying with better formatting. The lab assistant laughed before covering it with a cough. We passed. Not perfectly, honestly. Then Sienna and Leah sat at the front bench. Sienna opened with a flawless explanation of catalase, substrate concentration, and temperature effects. Her voice was smooth enough to pour into a textbook. Mr. Halden listened, expression unreadable. Then he asked Leah to explain why their 70 degrees Celsius trial still showed high activity. Leah froze. Sienna turned slightly, smile encouraging, eyes warning. Leah swallowed. I don't think it should. Sienna's smile held. We discussed possible experimental variation. No, Leah said, voice shaking. We didn't. I asked about it, and you said not to worry because the final numbers would be cleaned. The room went silent. Sienna's face remained perfect, but her hand moved to her pen. Top. Leah, she said softly, you're confused. Leah looked at me then, and I saw the exact moment a frightened girl decided whether to become another victim or a witness. She opened her folder and pulled out a wrinkled sheet. These were our actual raw readings, she said. I copied them before Sienna rewrote the table. Sienna stood so fast her chair scraped backward. That is private partner material. Callum whispered, and there goes Thursday. Mr. Halden took the sheet. Leah was crying now, but she kept talking. She said everyone adjusts data a little. She said Nora only acts strict because she doesn't know how top students survive moderation. She told me if I didn't sign the clean version, she'd tell everyone I contaminated the samples. The whole class was so quiet the rain against the windows sounded loud. Sienna's mask did not shatter. Not yet. It tightened, stretched, became something glassy and bright. Leah is under stress, she said. She struggled from the beginning. I tried to help her. Like you tried to help me? I asked. Sienna turned toward me, and for once she forgot Mr. Halden was watching. You should have stayed my partner. The sentence left her mouth clean and cold. Then none of this would be happening. It was not a confession to everyone else. To me, it was almost intimate. A villain mourning the broken trap. Mr. Halden looked between us. Sienna sat down. She did slowly. I am going to review both sets of raw data, upload histories, and lab recordings before grades are posted tomorrow. Sir, Sienna said, voice trembling again, my record is not the assessment, he said. That was the first time any adult at Northbridge said what should have been obvious. Her record was not evidence. Her record was the thing being protected. Once that protection cracked, everything underneath began to smoke. By Thursday afternoon, Sienna became dangerous in the way only cornered perfect people can be, politely, strategically, and with witnesses arranged. She found me outside the greenhouse where our potato samples had been stored, far enough from the main corridor to speak freely, but close enough to cameras that any physical reaction from me could be used. Nora, she said, eyes red-rimmed, voice small. Please stop. I did not move closer. Stop what? This. She gestured helplessly, turning everyone against me. Leah misunderstood. Callum hates me because of something from years ago. Mr. Halden is embarrassed and overcorrecting. You know how hard I've worked. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because in my first life, I had said the same thing. I had told them I worked hard. I had told them my data was real. I had told them my future mattered. They told me evidence mattered more. Now evidence had changed sides, and suddenly Sienna wanted mercy to outrank it. I know you work hard, I said. That's what makes this worse. Her lips parted. What? You're smart enough to earn high marks honestly. You just couldn't tolerate anyone else earning them too. Her face changed then. Not rage. Something more revealing. Insult. You don't understand what it means to be perfect. No, I said. I understand what it costs to stand near someone who needs to be. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. If this goes badly tomorrow, my scholarship nomination is gone. My early university recommendation is gone. My parents will. She stopped, and for the first time, I heard fear under the polish. Real fear. It did not soften me as much as I expected. Pain explains people. It does not absolve them. Then tell the truth before Friday, I said. Her eyes hardened. Truth doesn't restore what people take. No, irreplía. But lies take more. She smiled faintly, and it was the ugliest expression I had ever seen on her. Then I hope you kept copies of everything, Nora. My blood chilled. Not because it was a threat. Because it meant she knew I had copies, and she had a plan for them. That evening, someone reported my school account for data tampering. At 7:12 p.m., while I sat at the kitchen table eating instant noodles with one hand and formatting graphs with the other, my portal access disappeared. My files vanished from the shared folder. Then an email arrived from the school system. Your account has been temporarily restricted due to suspicious document activity. In my first life, this would have ended me. No access meant no submission. No submission meant incomplete assessment. Incomplete assessment meant Sienna's version filled the silence. This time, I stared at the message, felt my pulse climb, then opened my printed binder. Hard copies. USB copy. Email copy to my personal account.
Photos on my phone.
Shared backup with Callum. Shared backup with my mother, who did not understand half the files but understood the subject line. Do not delete. School evidence. She looked over from a sink as I started laughing. Good laugh or bad laugh? She asked. Prepared laugh. That sounds like your worst one. I explained quickly. Her face tightened. My mother, who had once trusted school emails like they were government documents, dried her hands and said, "Print more." So we did. We printed until the cheap printer coughed like a dying animal. Raw data, graphs, upload receipts, Mr. Halden's email, timestamp screenshots, Leah's statement photo, the video still of Sienna's slip, everything. At 9:04, Callum messaged, "My account restricted too." At 9:05, he sent another. Jokes on them. I emailed the data to my uncle, my cousin, myself, and the family dentist by accident. At 9:06, dentist says your denaturation explanation is strong. I laughed so hard my mother came back into the room to check if stress had finally broken me. Friday morning arrived bright and cold, which felt rude. A day like that should have thunderclouds, flickering lights, ominous music. Instead, Northbridge looked polished and ordinary, its red brick buildings shining after rain, students carrying coffees, teachers greeting parents near the gates, everyone unaware that by final period, the school's perfect science record would burn from the inside. Friday grades were posted at 3 p.m. after moderation. Before that, Mr. Halden had scheduled final evidence review meetings with affected pairs. My account was still locked when I arrived, which was almost comforting. A desperate move meant Sienna had run out of subtle ones. Callum met me outside the lab holding a stack of printed documents in a folder labeled tax returns because, he said, no one ever wanted to open tax returns. Leah stood near the door, pale but present. She texted me all night, Leah whispered. Sienna? She nodded. She said if I ruin her record, everyone will hate me. Then she said she forgives me for being confused. Her hands shook. I wanted to tell her it would be fine, but honesty had become our entire weapon. Some people will hate you for telling the truth, I said. But they were never safe people. Leah swallowed and nodded. Mr. Halden opened the lab door.
He looked exhausted.
Behind him sat Ms. Rourke, the deputy head of academics, and the IT coordinator, Mr. Flynn. Good. Adults with titles. Adults with witnesses. Sienna was already inside with her parents. I had met Sienna's parents once in my first life, during the disciplinary review. Her mother wore cream suits and weaponized disappointment. Her father spoke rarely, but when he did, administrators leaned toward him as if money had gravity. They sat beside Sienna now, both calm, both dangerous. Sienna looked fragile between them, hair down instead of tied back, eyes swollen, cardigan wrapped around her shoulders. A perfect daughter under attack. Her mother looked at me as I entered and said, "This has gone far enough." My mother, who had insisted on coming despite having a morning shift, stepped in behind me wearing her cafeteria uniform and a name badge still clipped to her shirt. "Good," she said. "Then let's finish it." Sienna's mother blinked as if furniture had spoken. I loved my mother so fiercely in that moment it hurt. Mr. Halden began with a formal issue. Discrepancies between raw data versions, suspicious evidence near another group's notebook, account restrictions, and a possible breach of academic integrity. Sienna's father placed a printed email on the desk. My daughter's record speaks for itself, he said. Ms. Rourke reached for it. I spoke before she could respond. No, it doesn't. Every adult looked at me. My voice stayed steady. A record is a history of what was accepted. It is not proof of what happened. Callum whispered, put that on a mug, then shut up when Mr. Halden glared. Mr. Flynn explained the account restrictions first. The reports against my account and Callum's account had come from an internal student device logged into Sienna's school credentials at 6:58 p.m. Thursday. Sienna's mother immediately said her account must have been compromised. Mr. Flynn, who looked like he had survived 20 years of students claiming printers ate their homework, nodded tiredly. Possibly. However, the device was connected from the Vale residence IP address. Sienna went still. Her father's jaw moved once. Her mother said, that proves nothing. Agreed, Mr. Flynn said. So, I checked the document access logs. He projected the timeline onto the lab screen. Sienna's account opened our Monday method after it was uploaded. Sienna's account opened her own Tuesday version 6 minutes later. Sienna's account accessed Leah's raw data file Thursday at 4:14 p.m. Then a new cleaned table was uploaded from Sienna's account at 4:29. At 6:58, reports were filed against my account and Callum's. At 7:03, Sienna's account attempted to delete an earlier draft from the shared folder. Deleted files, unfortunately for Sienna, remained in the admin recovery log. On the screen, the earlier draft showed messy raw readings matching Leah's copied sheet. The cleaned version showed impossible high-temperature activity. The room became very quiet. Sienna's mother said, less confidently, students share passwords. Leah spoke then, voice trembling but clear. I never had Sienna's password. She had mine. She said partners should trust each other. Sienna closed her eyes. Her perfect record did not burn with flames. It burned with login timestamps. Then came the slip of fake data. Mr. Halden played the bench video. Sienna brushing past. The paper appearing. My hand stopping her wrist. My immediate release. The slip opened. Numbers revealed. Sienna's father watched without expression, but his fingers tightened around his pen until it bent. Mr. Halden placed the physical slip inside a plastic sleeve on the table. The handwriting has similarities to Sienna's rough notes, he said carefully. It is not conclusive, but in context, Nora has orchestrated this all week, Sienna burst out. Her voice cracked in a way that made everyone look at her. She changed partners just to make me look suspicious. She recorded everything.
She set traps. She poisoned Leah against me.
She's been waiting for me to make one mistake. There it was, not denial, but resentment that my defense had been too effective. My mother leaned forward. One mistake. Sienna realized what she had said. Her mouth shut. Callum looked at the ceiling like he was praying for patience. Ms. Rourke wrote something down. I placed my printed binder on the desk. I recorded because in another version of this week, evidence appeared in my notebook and nobody asked how it got there. Sienna stared at me. Her face lost color. She did not understand rebirth, but guilt understood echoes. What does that mean? She whispered. It means I learned the value of witnesses before you did, I said. The final piece came from Leah, though none of us expected it. She opened her bag and pulled out a small envelope. I didn't know whether to bring this, she said. But Sienna gave it to me Monday after Nora changed partners. Sienna's head snapped toward her. Leah. Not soft. Not sweet. A command. Leah flinched, then kept going. She said if Nora tried to interfere, I should put this near Callum's bag during practical work. Mr. Halden took the envelope. Inside was a second slip of paper with fabricated numbers, plus a tiny strip of blue painter's tape stuck to one edge. My tape. The same tamper strip we used on our data pages. If planted, it would look like the fake data had come from our notebook. Callum's face went completely blank. That scared me more than anger. You were going to frame me too? He asked quietly. Sienna looked at him, then at me, then at Leah, and something inside her finally cracked, not into tears, but into contempt. Do you know what happens to girls like me if we slip once? She said. Her mother whispered her name, but Sienna kept speaking. Everyone waits for it. Everyone says perfect like it's a compliment, but they mean prison. 198, and they ask what went wrong. 1 second place, and they ask who beat you. 1 scholarship girl with better raw data, and suddenly your parents look at you like you're a defective product. Her voice shook. I wasn't going to lose everything because Nora Quinn finally wanted to be seen. There it was, spoken in the lab, in front of the teacher, deputy IT coordinator, parents, partner, and boy she tried to frame. Not a full confession, but enough truth to light the match. Ms. Rourke ended the meeting before Sienna could say more, which was probably the first intelligent administrative decision of the week. She announced that final grades would be delayed for the affected groups pending investigation, that Sienna's submission would be removed from automatic top grade moderation, that account access would be preserved for review, and that no disciplinary mark would be placed on my or Callum's record. Sienna's mother objected sharply. My mother objected louder, asking why there was no immediate consequence for attempted framing. Ms. Rourke used words like process, fairness, evidence threshold, and safeguarding. I heard them through a strange rushing in my ears. In my first life, Friday grades posted with Sienna at the top and me marked under review. In this life, Friday grades would not save her. They would wait. They would question. They would open the floor beneath her perfect record and show the wires holding it up. As we left the lab, Sienna stopped beside me. Her face was pale, eyes dry, voice low enough for only me to hear. You think you won because my grade is delayed? I looked at her. No, then what? I won when Mr. Halden stopped saying your record like it was evidence. Her lips trembled just once. Then she walked away with her parents, smaller between them than she had looked all week. The official grade report did not post at 3 p.m. Instead, at 2:47, Northbridge sent a notice to senior science students. Practical assessment results delayed pending verification of data integrity. The group chat exploded. Nobody knew details, but everybody knew gravity had shifted. Sienna did not come to afternoon homeroom. Leah sat beside me without asking and cried quietly into her sleeve. Callum drew a cartoon enzyme wearing sunglasses and labeled it catalase under cross-examination. I laughed for the first time that week, which made Leah cry harder for some reason. Mr. Halden entered near the end of homeroom and asked me, Callum, and Leah to step outside. My stomach tightened out of habit, but his face was different now. Tired.
Ashamed.
Human. I owe you an apology, he said. Teachers often apologize badly if they apologize at all. They explain instead of owning. They say sorry you felt. Sorry things became. Sorry there was confusion. Mr. Halden did not. He looked at me and said, I relied too heavily on prior reputation. I treated record as character. That was wrong. I had imagined this moment in my first life so many times that receiving it in the second felt almost unreal. I wanted it to heal everything. It did not, but it stitched one torn edge.
Thank you, I said.
Callum looked at him. And me. Mr. Halden sighed. I underestimated you. That's fair, Callum said. I encouraged that. Leah gave a watery laugh. For 1 minute in the hallway, we were not victims, suspects, or partners. We were students after a very strange science class, standing under fluorescent lights while the world recalibrated. The investigation widened over the next 2 weeks. Once adults allowed themselves to doubt Sienna Vale, old stories resurfaced like bones after rain. Emma from year 8 still had photos of the missing chromatography board before it disappeared. Callum's cousin had email drafts showing Sienna's suggested changes to her conclusion that later became the basis for a plagiarism concern. A former lab assistant admitted Sienna often stayed after class alone to tidy equipment, a privilege granted because she was trusted. Leah submitted the Monday envelope and her messages. IT recovered deleted drafts. Mr. Halden reviewed past assessment anomalies and looked like each one aged him a month. Sienna's perfect record did not collapse in one dramatic announcement. It burned like paper from the corner inward, first curling, then blackening, then revealing that what looked solid had always been thin. Some students defended her, of course. They said everyone makes mistakes. They said pressure is real. They said Nora should have handled it privately. Privately is where girls like me disappear. I learned to let those people talk until they revealed what they valued. Peace over truth, polish over harm, reputation over repair. Northbridge eventually issued disciplinary findings for academic dishonesty, attempted evidence planting, unauthorized account reporting, and coercion of a partner. Sienna withdrew before the final sanction was announced. Wealthy students rarely fall. They transfer with language packed around them like bubble wrap. I saw her once more before she left. It was outside the greenhouse on a windy afternoon, the same place she had begged me to stop. She wore no pearl earrings, no lab coat, no perfect ponytail. Her hair was loose, and for the first time, she looked like a girl instead of a school brochure. "My parents are sending me to Westmere," she said without greeting me. Westmere was a private school 2 towns over, expensive enough to launder almost any scandal into Fresh Start. "Congratulations," I said. That sounded cruel. It was accurate. She stared at the greenhouse glass. Inside, rows of seedlings leaned toward the weak winter sun. "Do you know what's funny? My final biology grade here will be incomplete." She laughed once, not happily. "For years perfect, then one blank." I said nothing.
She turned to me.
"You really hate me."
I did, I said.
"In another life, I hated you so much it kept me awake. This week, I mostly watched you." Her eyes narrowed. "You keep saying things like that. You keep understanding them more than you admit." Wind moved between us. For a moment, I thought she might apologize. Instead, she said, "I was better than you at everything except losing." That was probably the most honest sentence she had ever given me. "No," I said. "You are better at appearing untouched. That's not the same as being better." Her face tightened. "And what are you now? Hero of the lab?" I shook my head.
No.
"Just the girl who changed partners." She looked away first. That was enough. Friday grades were eventually posted on a Monday, which felt like the universe, making a joke only I understood. My mark appeared beside Callum's, 96. Not perfect. We lost marks for the timer error, and a graph label Callum insisted was stylistically clear but apparently was not. I loved that 96 more than I would have loved 100. It had fingerprints on it. Human ones. Leah received a provisional grade based on verified raw data and an independent oral defense. She cried again, but this time in relief. Sienna's grade showed as withheld pending transfer review. Her name disappeared from the scholarship ranking board by Wednesday. Not scratched out. Not marked.
Just gone.
The empty space where her perfect record had stood drew more attention than any punishment notice could have. Northbridge replaced the old top science scholars display with a new board showing group research photos, process notes, and messy lab books. It was probably an attempt at reputation repair, but I still liked seeing imperfect graphs under glass. My mother took a photo of my grade and sent it to every relative we had, including one aunt who replied, "What is catalase?" Callum's dentist emailed congratulations and asked if enzyme denaturation had dental relevance. Callum told him everything had dental relevance if you were brave enough. Life somehow continued. On the last day of term, Mr. Halden asked me to speak to the next year 10 class about practical investigations. I almost refused because being turned into a lesson makes me itchy. But Callum said, "Do it. Tell them science is just organized suspicion." So I stood in the same lab where Sienna had tried to plant fake data and looked at 30 younger students in goggles too big for their faces. I did not tell them the whole story. Schools prefer their scandals sanitized, and some truths belong to the people who survived them. I told them this instead. Write raw data immediately. Never erase errors. Photograph setups. Keep duplicate copies. Sign changes with your partner. And remember that perfect results are less trustworthy than honest ones. A boy in the front asked, "What if your partner gets mad because you're being too careful?" I looked at the bench where Sienna used to sit. Then, be careful twice. The class laughed, but I meant it. Afterward, Callum found me packing away goggles and tossed me a potato with a face drawn on it.
"For trauma closure," he said.
I stared at it. This is disturbing. His name is Sir Catalase. I laughed so hard I had to sit down. In my first life, science became the place where my future burned. In this life, it became ridiculous again. That felt like recovery. Years later, when people asked why I became a researcher, I never told them it was because I was reborn the week a perfect girl tried to turn my own data into a weapon. I said I liked evidence. That was true, just incomplete. Evidence saved me, because I learned to save it first. I kept one page from that week in a frame above my desk. Not the final grade, not the apology letter, not the disciplinary finding. The page I kept was our raw data sheet from Wednesday, blue tape on the corner, Callum's messy initials beside mine, one trial crossed out with the note, timer started late, exclude from mean, include in appendix. It was ugly. It was honest. It was proof that mistakes do not destroy truth when you label them correctly. Sienna's perfect record burned before Friday's grades, but what stayed with me was not the burning. It was the moment I chose a different bench, a different witness, a different way to be believed. In my first life, I thought partnership meant trusting someone not to hurt you. In my second, I learned partnership also means choosing someone who will write down what happened while the smoke is still rising. And if there is one rule I carried into every lab, every classroom, every future room where polished people smiled too calmly, it was this. Never fear messy data. Fear the person who needs every result to look perfect.